It's good day to brew, baby. What is up, YouTube? It's your boy Millsy. Back with Hometown Commander Rick for another episode of Millsy Brews, the show where I take my first pass at the commander in front of us on a budget on my quest out to brew the magic world. You know the motto, baby, it's ABB, always be brewing it, and that's what we're back to do today. That deck list is going to be down in the description for you below. I would really appreciate if you could interact with the video, like, comment, subscribe. Consider checking out those links in the description. I really appreciate it. But today, we're finishing up the last of the PlayStation Secret Lair commanders we're going to talk about. Today we're talking about Ellie and Joel, partner survivors. Jund pair, Ellie is mono red, Brickmaster, human survivor. Whenever a player attacks one of your opponents, that attacking player creates a tap 1/1 fungus zombie creature token named Cordyceps Infected that's attacking that opponent. So note here with Ellie, right, your opponents will be able to get those tokens as well. And then Joel, who's in Golgari, says whenever a creature token dies, we're going to put a counter on Joel and draw a card, and this goes off once each turn. Joel is probably where the deck is going to try to take real advantage of our Aristocrats game engine, because Joel's going to draw us cards, which is a big deal, right? Helping us dig through our library, getting to our better pieces. It's really also important to note that Joel does not say that creature token has to die under your control. So if an opponent attacks and gets one of these tokens off of Ellie, and that token gets, blocked and killed in combat, well, Joel could potentially grow. The other key thing about Joel is Joel can do this once each turn, meaning our turn and our opponent's turns, right? So the goal here is going to be to try to get Joel to go off every turn, drawing us cards, and we're going to try to put in Sacrifice and Aristocrats engines around Joel and Ellie to take over the Sacrifice game plan and drain our opponents out. But I want to say a quick thank you to the channel members. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. If you're interested in seeing all of our videos just a little bit early for just $1 a month, consider checking that out down below. Well, all right. Ellie's going to do a okay job at making tokens, probably just enough for us to use for Joel once. But we want to find other ways to make tokens. And there's a lot of ways to approach this. I think it's just going to come down to what way you like the best. You have things like planeswalkers like Garrett, Cursed Huntsman, makes a couple wolves. Whenever they die, they put a loyalty counter back on Garrick. Garrick also has that nice -6, which can really buff all of our creatures. Bellatrix is going to make a pest on everybody's turn, and then we can actually pay 10 life to untap all of our lands if we need to. Broadcat Badger lets us make a couple saplings on its adventure side, and on its regular side, it just makes a sapling on each of our end steps and then lets all of our fungi and sapling tap for mana. Chatterfang, of course, is a value engine in its own right. Whenever you'd make one or more tokens, you make that many tokens plus that many squirrels, and you can sacrifice squirrels to help remove creatures. We get the reprint of Mycoloth as Cordyceps Rat King, a big 5-mana 4/4 that comes in with a Devour 2. So when it comes in, you can sacrifice 2 creatures or any number of times. And if you do, you sacrifice a creature any number of times, and you get 2 times the amount of creatures you sacrifice in counters. At the beginning of your upkeep, we make a bunch of saplings equal to the number of counters on it, which is pretty fun. Ophiumancer is going to give us a snake on each of our upkeeps if we don't control any snakes. Scootsworm is going to make those insects every time a land comes in. Tendershoot Dryad, very similar to Bellatrix, is going to make a sapling on everybody's turn and buffs our saplings once we hit a certain number of permanents. Temple of Vengeance lets us make a bunch of elementals, and if we give the choice to make the elementals, if they do, we get that many, and all of ours get haste, which is pretty cool. Infantry Shield can attach to a creature and make a bunch of temporary warriors attacking your combat and gives that creature menace. Scepter Celebration says whenever that creature hits a player, we make that many citizens. You can just start to see there's so many great ways to make tokens and try to make a lot of them. I like something like Infantry Shield and Scepter Celebration because when it's on Joel, right, the bigger Joel gets, the more of these you're getting. Awakening Zone can make an Eldrazi spawn on each of our turns, and that can be used for colorless mana. Doubling Season and Parallel Lives are both just going to double the amount of tokens we would make, allowing us to just get more and more value on our end. And then Endless Ranks of the Dead, because those tokens that Ellie is making are zombies. Endless Ranks of the Dead says at the beginning of our upkeep, we're going to make X 2/2 black zombie creature tokens, where X is half the number of zombies we control rounded down. So the hope is we can start stashing those zombies, right, if we see Endless Ranks of the Dead, and starting to get more and more of them every turn. But again, Joel Attacking with these 1/1s and getting them blocked is a great way to have them die, but we can also try to sacrifice them for our benefit. You have things like Corvold that whenever it enters or attacks, you have to sacrifice another permanent. Whenever you sacrifice a permanent, you put a counter on Corvold and draw. So there's a way for you to get the same card draw and that same buff on a creature by sacrificing, right, instead of it just dying. Sephiroth says whenever it enters or attacks, you can sack another creature. If you do, use your draw card, and his ability starts draining each opponent every time another creature dies. And then once you hit 4 of them per turn in the same turn, he flips over into a creature that says, whenever it attacks, you may sacrifice any number of other creatures, and if you do, draw that many cards. So now Sephiroth can get all of our tokens sacrificed to dig, and then we can really pair them with these other effects that we have. Warren Soul Trader sacrifices creatures to make tokens. Alter Dementia can freely sacrifice a creature to have a player mill cards equal to its power. And Skull Clamp can be attached to a 1/1 to kill it and draws 2 cards. So you can kind of see that there are plenty of ways we can take advantage of these little tokens hanging around while trying to gain more value for ourselves. So where the key way we care about this is Aristocrats payoffs. Now, if you're unfamiliar with what Aristocrats deck means, it means we're trying to sacrifice creatures for benefit. Now, that can be mana, that can be other things, but traditionally, it's effects like these we're going to talk about that damage your opponent whenever creatures die. So Blood Artist has target opponent player lose a life when we gain a life. That's on any creature dying. Marionette Apprentice says whenever a creature or artifact we control is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, each opponent loses a life. Mirkwood says each opponent loses a life whenever we create or sacrifice a token. Nadier's Nightblade says whenever a token we control leaves the battlefield, everybody loses one and we gain one. Pit of Splendor is going to make a treasure token every time one of our creatures dies. Slimefoot deals 1 damage to each opponent and gain 1 life whenever a Saproling we control dies and can make Saprolings, but we have other cards in the deck that can make Saprolings as well. Zulapor Cutthroat, each opponent loses a life when we gain a life whenever another creature we control dies. Same thing on Bastion Remembrance. And then we get a couple pretty brutal effects. The Dictative Erebos gets a reprint as Ellie's Rage and says whenever a creature we control dies, each opponent has to sacrifice a creature of their choice. Big thing to note about this is it's going to get around Indestructible, it's going to get around Shroud, it's going to get around Ward, it's going to get around Hexproof. Your opponents, you're not targeting, your opponents just have to choose and sacrifice one of them. That's pretty nice because if we can have multiple creatures die per turn, both Dictative Erebos and Grave Pact are going to really help our opponents just have to start rid their board of their creatures as we hopefully just chew through their resources, and then hopefully we could take over the board with all of our creatures. Since we want to be destroying our creatures, obviously, right, we don't mind killing them or sacrificing them so that we can get value from them. And then Meat Hook, whenever one of our creatures dies, your opponent loses one, and whenever loses one, and then whenever one of our creatures and opponent's controls dies, we gain one. So Meat Hook is really nice because not only does it come in as a mini board wipe, but also gives us value on each of those. But I've said it before on the show, and I'll say it again. No deck's ever complete, and I think going into testing, you got to figure out where you want to get your tokens from. There's a lot of different ways to do it. I love a card like Bitter Blossom, giving you a Fury Rogue on each of your turns. Of course, pretty hefty price tag still, but a great card at it. And for anyone who wants to look slightly ahead, Lorwyn's going to have a second copy of Bitter Blossom. Has a new copy of Bitter Blossom, but it's on a creature, so you can have multiple copies of that effect. A Venom of Zendikar, when it comes in, makes a bunch of 0/1 plants equal to the number of lands you control. Great way to get a bunch of tokens at once, and there's so many other ways to do that. And you have more free sack outlets. You have things like Phyrexian Altar that lets you sacrifice a creature for mana. You have things like Yeheni that can sacrifice a creature to give itself indestructible, but allows you another way at instant speed just to sacrifice a creature if you need to, which is key because that's how we're going to trigger Joel every turn, making sure counters get on him. But let's do what we love to do on the channel the most and get into our playtests. Remember, the goal of playtests on our channel is not to find magical Christmas land. It's not just to show off all our best plays, but it's to get in some gameplay scenarios and kind of understand what hands we're going to look to keep and how we're going to set them up. So here, I've got Soul Ring. This is a 3-lander. Now, note two of these go get a land that come in tapped, and this one come in tapped. So it's a very tapped-heavy land, but note if I go get basics off both of these, this can come in untapped. We have a little bit of Recursion and Insidious Roots, which is lets all of our tokens tap for mana. So I'm trying to think of what makes the most sense. We could get Ellie in next turn if we just go like a River Tears Outlook for a mountain is my thought. And then as we come into this turn, that can get down the Soul Ring. We could crack the Landscape. That guarantees this coming in untapped. This is unfortunately got to come in tapped. But I think we want to go start to get something that we can then get that done with. I guess we miss Ellie this turn, right? Because then we can get. Could we have done that differently? Because I didn't have an untapped land, right? That was the problem. Because I can get Joel down this turn, I just can't do anything with it. I wonder if it's like Ellie plus the roots just to get it started. And then here's Joel to try to get that 1/1 fungus, right? And have it getting around, ready to be used. Then Sagundian tapped here, so now we've got 6 mana. I mean, we can get Meat Hook in as a way to start the party again. We have no true sack outlet just quite yet, so that's the only real downside. But again, these 1/1s attacking are inevitably going to die, right? Causing Joel to trigger. Now, let's say, someone had their 1/1 killed on our opponent's turns, just to say we have it. Ellie can only go off once per combat, right? With the way it's worded. We could go, Pest Infestation for like 2, get rid of a couple artifacts or enchantments we want to. We could Cabal Ritual. And then, Pest Infestation for 3, it would make us a bunch of pest tokens and get rid of a bunch of artifacts and enchantments. That would be my thought. We would end up with 6 pests and get rid of a couple key, whether it's mana rocks or things like that. We'd end up making another one this turn. And again, the key part now is that we can, use those pests in combat. They can now tap for mana because of the Insidious roots. I almost wonder if it's worth just like getting up something like the Segundi so we can draw cards, right? Really interesting way to kind of sacrifice creatures, right, to draw cards equal to its power. I think the thing is we need to start kind of getting these creatures to die, whether it's attacking with them and hoping they die so that, Joel can draw us cards that way. That's the one thing that's kind of odd to simulate here that I think is probably going to end up happening, which is you're just going to start running these into people. They're going to end up dying, and you don't want to run too many of them in because you don't want to just lose them all if you think you can wait and get some value from them. But at the same time, like, you want to get them in. Like, we could just as easily, Meat Hook here for 1. All our opponents would lose 8. We would get a counter on Joel and draw a card, but we would lose all the tokens we made. But I mean, it is a way to turn them into something. You could also use them all to just station up the Segundi. And I think that way, you basically just station up the Segundi, and then you could Meat Hook if you wanted to. You've still got that set up to draw on future turns. And again, we would just keep trying to dig into more things. We didn't really see a good way to really produce a ton of tokens here. I mean, Ellie's going to help us out with 1 per turn, but I would have loved to have seen maybe another way to make a few more, right, over the course of a couple of turns, which, again, I think is something that when we're in the process of testing, keep that in the back of your mind. If you're not always seeing enough token producers, maybe then that's the changes you're making, right, to sit down and say, okay, I need more token producers. How do I find those? Playtest 2 here, 2-lander with Farseek. So we've got some ramp, we've got Cultivate as well. So this will try to get us enough black for that Grave Pact. Idol of Oblivion, great way to draw whenever you make tokens. And there's Mycoloth. So I like the idea of going 1, 2 for Ellie. Turn 3, I think we Cultivate, right? My thought is Swamp to board, Swamp to hand. Remember, we do need to get up to that fantastic triple black for the Grave Pact. Attack this turn, get the... Oh, and there we go. We managed to draw another black source, so that's perfect for the purposes of Grave Pact next turn. Play Joel, again, attack. Let's just say for the purpose of this, it gets blocked and gets killed. Causing us to draw another card. This kind of stings because I pretty much like every card in my hand, but maybe it's time to get rid of the Farseek. Here you can get the Segundi in. I think Tendershoot Dryad makes a ton of sense. Starting to get those Saprolings, right? You attack, make the zombie. Again, let's say it dies and we draw. And then now, you know, as long as no one gets rid of this Tendershoe Dryad, you're coming back to our turn with just a bunch of Saprolings now. They're all going to be 3/3s now because of Tendershoe Dryad. These can very easily station up the Void Altar, right, Segundi? So now that would basically be online, and you could start using it to sack the Saprolings to draw cards if you wanted to. But at the same time, this turn, I mean, I really like Grave Pact. It's going to pretty much put some real pressure on your opponents because now they know that, well, if I kill a creature, you know, if one of my creatures dies, they're stuck up for the bill of it, right? They're going to have to lose life for it. I think I like the Cutthroat. I think I just like stationing up here with the Saprolings. I guess instead of this Cutthroat, I could Segundi a Saproling, but I don't want to have to pitch cards. And then attack, you know, I think you inevitably lose one of these, gain one, draw a card, and everybody has to sack one. And then as we come back to our turn, Michaeloth might look really good here because you've got a few more Saprolings from the Tendershoe Dryad, and now this game, right? We saw the Dryad, we saw the Aristocrats payoffs. All we were missing was a free way to sacrifice our creatures, but I think that's okay. You could start clamping the 1/1 zombies because they're not Saprolings, so they're not going to get buffed by Tendershoe Dryad. So you could start clamping them if you wanted to. Note that Ellie is small enough we could clamp her if we wanted to draw. But again, you also have the option to just sacrifice Joel to the Segundi to draw a bunch of cards and try to hit more pieces. You know, something like Corvold's probably going to help you try to take over the game. And I like the idea of bringing in a secondary commander or a secondary threat like Corvold to have it not just be Joel. That's the thing that people have to worry about. You know, with both of these out, they're both growing over the course, right? This one as we sacrifice, or it attacks as we sacrifice. And if we found another sack outlet, you know, Corvold can grow a little bit bigger. Whereas Joel's just going to grow no matter what. And then we can really try to pay into this, you know, Grave Pact Corvold. You know, you can see of a couple ways to sacrifice and ways to really, you know, negatively affect our opponent. But again, I think the key thing to remember here is that the system works, right? It's just about, are we finding enough of the individual pieces? And if we're not, then we affect, right, the number of those pieces in our deck. I know it sounds like a stupid thing to repeat, but this is the key thing, and this is why I think I take the stance I take on the channel, is that no deck list is ever going to be perfect. And as you test it, you're going to start to understand where your list is failing and where your list is succeeding. And that's how you can, you know, change your list to be better. Playtest 3 here, 4-lander with that Temp with Vengeance for lots of tokens. There's the Altar for a sack outlet and Zulaport Cutthroat. Now, the important thing to know about Aristocrats decks, especially for those of you that haven't played a ton of them, is that you actually can create loops with certain creatures where you could sacrifice a creature and then be able to get another one back. Like, it is an option, and it is possible. I think I'm going to hit the Adventure here to make the Saprolings. Brightcap can then come in next turn, right, and have them start. Ellie attack. Make that zombie. And then my thought is this turn, play the Badger on its regular side. So now those Saprolings can tap for green if we want them to. I don't really see anything too key going on for a green. But again, we get one on our end step, which is nice. And then now, you know, those Saprolings are a nice, great way to add some mana. We still don't. We have our sack outlet and Altered Dimension, so we could tap 2 of them to get this in, and we actually could sack one right now if we want to have, you know, Joel grow, or we could sack one of these to have Joel grow and draw. And again, now the nice part is if somebody tries to wipe the board, let's say, and we don't want to lose all of our creatures, well, you can just stack them all to the altar, have them, you know, go to lose the cards. Then the nice thing about having a sack outlet like Altar out is, let's say an opponent uses a exile board, right, like Farewell. Well, you could just sacrifice all your creatures to the altar in response. Then at least your real creatures are going to stay in the graveyard, and you don't just lose straight out to, you know, not having them, and then, you know, just have a ton of fun. And then here, you can get in Zulaport, but 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, I think. Could go like 9 into a Temp with Vengeance. You know, go in, get them attacking. If somebody blocks them, just sack them to the altar. I mean, Joel's just guaranteed to grow this turn. I guess you could go 7 and then just get Zulaport in. That way, if they die, you're threatening the life loss. Because if you think about it, with 7 of these elementals, the 4th zombie I'm going to gain this turn of these saplings, I've got 15 creatures on board. I mean, if you think about it that way, that would be, what, 15 damage I can now threaten at actually instant speed. Because, you know, let's say I swing the board. Well, not these. I tapped them for mana. But let's say I swing the board out. Well, now if they block them, I can just sack them to the altar to mill, and I'm still getting this trigger, and, you know, Joel's growing at least once this turn. But I mean, if you think about it, if not, I'm basically just presenting all that damage on board to my opponents, and the hope is I can just continue to make more of these tokens, make more zombies off of the Ellie, make more saplings off of the Badger, and you can start to see where hopefully we can start replenishing more tokens. I love something like Ride of the Raging Storm, which triggers Joel really well because everybody's Raging Storm token has to die at the start of the beginning of each end step, so Joel is going to trigger no matter what, right? And so we could find effects like this and these other things to really just make sure we're getting tokens every turn that have to be sacrificed, have to die, so that Joel can trigger, grow, and that. But I think it's also important to kind of make a engine that isn't just reliant on Joel. Like, to me, Joel is card advantage. He's not like the Aristocrats end step, the end goal that you want. So what's nice about Joel is that he'll help you draw into those key pieces that you can stick together, right, and make really good value out of. Here I've got a 2-lander. There's the other Ellie from the other Last of Us Secret Lair. We could pay 2 life, sack a creature, deal 2 damage to target player, and Ellie gets indestructible in a turn. So there is technically a free sack Ellie, although it does cost us life. There's the shield, again, great for Joel. There's the Chatterfang, going to make us some squirrels. And the really nice part about Chatterfang specifically is that it's going to start allowing us just to make a bunch of tokens. So here, I mean, I like getting in right away with Ellie, make the squirrel, make the zombie, and even if Ellie, for some reason, let's say she just died there, they had the block for her there. Well, I don't really mind because I'm still getting the squirrel. Here, I think it's just the shield. And you attack again. It's kind of unfortunate to put Ellie in the way, but I mean, maybe if you had to attack with Chatterfang, you could attack somewhere where you're guaranteed to hit in. Now does feel like a perfect time for Joel, but see if we Insidious Roots, that's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we could Joel and hold up some black mana for Chatterfang. Attack, bang, bang. And then, maybe one of those dies in combat, which grows Joel. Maybe we sack one of the squirrels, right, to deal with our opponent's things. But I mean, now the nice part is you can put the shield on Joel. Joel's going to start making all these warriors each turn. They have to die that turn, so they're going to inevitably end up growing him. But I think the key thing is that you're, I think I might as well just sack this for a swamp. The key thing is that you're now giving him Menace, which makes him harder to block. I mean, he already had it, but again, the key thing is the mobilize, right? More tokens. And then, right, Chatterfang's making squirrels when you make the warriors. And you could start to see where you can really take advantage of creating those things. 3 mana left. I really just like the idea of saving my black mana to try to use the squirrels. Because now, I mean, you're making one here. He's attacking, making, 5 warriors off the shield, which makes 5 more squirrels, right? And the squirrels don't have to be automatically sacrificed like the warriors, which is pretty nice. And so we're guaranteed to lose the warriors this turn, but now we're guaranteed to keep those squirrels. Now, Chatterfang can use them for removal. And now literally all we need is something like Grave Pact, right? Because now when you sacrifice these squirrels, your opponents are going to really get hurt by the amount of things they're going to have to sacrifice. And Chatterfang is such a really good Aristocrats outlet token outlet in a lot of ways, because all you need is some other way to make tokens. You're just going to make so many tokens. I mean, you could even put the shield on Chatterfang if you want to, but it just makes more sense on Joel. I mean, you almost don't even need Joel here He's just great for the card draw, right? But now, I mean, you just keep making squirrels, and as long as you have black mana up, you can start threatening at people's creatures at instant speed, right? With Chatterfang's ability. And again, really truthfully, all we're missing here is a good way to punish our opponents every time a creature dies other than Grave Pact. Like if we had a Bastion or something like that, so this would be even better. I mean, you're talking about 10 or 12 damage just on standby, and then all those warriors are dying, so they're going to trigger Grave Pact. They're going to trigger the Aristocrats outlets. And again, you just find these ways to stick these pieces together, and you end up inevitably dealing, more damage to your opponents. But I'd love to know, what do you think of Ellie and Joel down in the comment section below? Again, I like this idea. I like the idea of one making the zombies and the other one, using them to grow. There's a lot of options in this Mardu Aristocrat space. I mean, Corvold's probably your top option. It's the most popular. But even Chatterfang, of course, is very popular in just the Golgari, the black-green version of this. So there's so many key pieces, and I would just recommend that when you're building decks like this that care about an archetype, look for other commanders that are in your archetype and put them in your 99. Use them as key pieces. That way, maybe if Joel gets removed once or twice, you have other commanders that can come in and, and helm your list and make it better. But I'd love to know what you think in the comment section below, and I will catch you all in the next one.